right, sorry, waiting for the live stream to start. All right, welcome to Refresh. I am Susan Simpkins. For those of you who don't know me, I am a senior UX dev at Big Wing Interactive. We have Sarah Graybill speaking next month. And I also want to give a shout out to 200 OK. It's a really awesome tech conference this Friday in Tulsa, Oklahoma at the public library. We also have a discount code for that. It's Techlahoma UG for user group, just like the organization, and I'll post that on Facebook so you can go ahead and use that. They'll give you $25 off, and there are still 17 tickets available if you want to attend. I'll be there, and I'm sure I'm not the only one who'll be there this Friday. We have a lot of really awesome speakers. And I also want to thank Taylor and Addison Group for sponsoring. They brought Chick-fil-A today, which is just really amazing. So I think Taylor has a couple words for us.
Hey, I'm Taylor Powell, for those of you that don't know me. I'm with Addison Group. We brought Chick-fil-A. We dropped the ball on the vegetarian options, so I apologize, guys. I thought there was salad coming. We'll do better next time. But I have a few cards over there if any of you guys are interested in talking about what the OKC development market looks like right now. We're constantly looking to just network and talk about what we're seeing. So thanks for letting us be a part of this stuff, guys.
And that's all I have. So we have Will speaking this month about JAMstack, and we're going to learn all kinds of awesome things. So if you want to take it away.
Thank you. Wow, okay. So my name is Will. Again, I am a, oh, is that working? Yeah, I'm plugged in. We'll get this going. There we go. Cool. Intro to JAMstack. So again, my name is Will. I am a web designer, UI designer, UX guy, front-end dev. Want to talk today about JAMstack. It's a cool new way of thinking, approach to how you can build websites and apps. It's been around for about a year or two, but it's gaining more traction, and a lot more people are using it to build websites and apps because of a lot of the benefits there. So today, probably won't get into a lot of the nitty gritty of some of the tech and development stuff, but just want to give you guys a real solid overview of what it is and where it can be useful maybe in your projects or with your clients or your company or whatever the case may be. Want to thank Refresh OKC for inviting me to talk this month. I really appreciate it. Super honored to do it. And so just give you a little bit of background about myself. I started out freelance designing, just taking projects in college and doing that, kind of hustling. I was born in New Orleans, grew up in Memphis, worked a lot there, built up a big clientele there, which, you know, by the way, it's a new logo. Currently, well, I've also worked for agencies and contracted for agencies and stuff like that, but currently I work for a startup. I work remotely here from Oklahoma with some guys in Memphis, and we've been working on a company called Savvy PCI, which is building a search engine for PCI data to kind of equip PCI professionals, which has to do with payment security, to be able to handle that data for their clients. And I'm excited to say we actually launched it this morning, so I'm super excited about that. Yes, after 2 years. So, but just to give you a little background about, you know, my experience and what I've done. And so I've done, you know, I've played with a lot of frameworks and tools and CMSs and different things like that. So there's having that experience, you know, I can say that the JAMstack has a lot of appeal to people who, you know, work in this kind of stuff. And just as a show of hands, just so I can get a lay of the audience, how many like backend developers do we have here? Okay, yeah, a good bit. And what about front end? Okay, yeah, and designers? Okay, so we got a good mix, and so there's a lot of value in the JAMstack for everyone involved in this kind of stuff. So we'll just kind of get into it here. Way back, we used to build websites, and the way to do it was just build some files and tables and static pages, and you threw it up on FTP and hope nothing went wrong. So, you know, and that worked for a while, and people got paid good money to do that. Um, and then, other things came along and, more complex systems developed. People started doing things with dynamic websites and server technology developed. And, but, that's over time has gotten really complicated. I mean, you can see some of the folder structures for like, and template structures for WordPress or Drupal. And, sometimes, it's easy to get lost in all this stuff. Especially when there's a bug somewhere and you can't figure out, why there's a file missing or where that's at, or that you can kind of get cross-eyed looking through some of this stuff, and get you feeling a little bit lost. And sometimes we all know, especially for front-end developers, it's a pain to have to deal with databases when all you want to do is just design it and build the front end and make it work. Here's a schema, a database schema for WordPress, and we really don't like to go digging into this stuff as front-end developers. Then you get into Drupal, which is even more complicated. Yeah, or Magento, which is just, I don't even know where to begin with Magento. I've touched it a few times, and it's a bear. And of course, we know the beloved PHP by admin. When it's a pain a lot of times when you have to migrate sites, or you have to go digging in these tables to fix a value, or you missing some values somewhere, and you're trying to troubleshoot why this isn't working. And it's it's just a slow, hokey process. That's just what we've kind of come to with web technology, and it's not the best, but it works. And sometimes people that mess with these things shouldn't be, and like people like this guy. So, and another aspect too is, WordPress is big. We all know that, and it's a love-hate relationship. Of course, WordPress boasts that 27% of the internet is running on WordPress. But another issue with a lot of web tech right now is obviously a hot topic is security issues. With WordPress being so big, it also makes it a really big target for hackers and people with nefarious intentions. And one security firm in 2013 said that of the top 1 million websites on Alexa, the ones that were WordPress, 73% of those were vulnerable to hackers, which is, a huge number of, you think about the top 1 million websites ranked on Alexa, that's stark. And then you look at Drupal. In 2014, they had a famous bug where they said that basically you should just assume that every Drupal website was compromised if you hadn't updated it within 7 hours after the announcement of this issue. So security is another big issue. We've got terrible workflows, big slow-moving parts. We've got security issues. There's a lot of pain points with a lot of workflow and in the way we develop websites. So, then things started to develop a little more. We started to get more tools like Git and services like GitHub, which made it a lot easier. Things like version control made it easier to kind of keep track of your code without, conflicting with people trying to FTP files back and forth. And then more build tools started to develop like Grunt and Gulp, static site generators. Of course, we know that a lot of frameworks started to proliferate. The landscape started changing very rapidly, and people were able to do a lot more things with web tech than they used to. And now it just goes on and on and on. There's like a new framework every day. So it's interesting that even with all these build tools, some people started to go back to building static websites, which is kind of interesting. We made that full circle. But an interesting thing that started to develop with all these new capabilities was that even though people were kind of building things to be served up statically, they were doing a lot more than static websites. They were still doing a lot of things that dynamic websites could do with static tools. And so a few guys started wondering, like, should we really still call it static websites if they're doing all these extra things that isn't just like a brochure site? And, are they one-page apps? What? So there were some guys out in California that were playing a lot with this, and this we're throwing around, like, we need to define this concept that so many people are using, this trend that's developing of building these websites and apps that use a lot of static build tools, but do so much more and so much better than a lot of so-called dynamic websites. And so they came up with the term JAM. And that stands for JavaScript, APIs, and markup. And they called it the JAMstack. And that kind of stuck. And this is kind of the official definition they came up with. The JAMstack is the modern web development architecture based on client-side JavaScript, reusable APIs, and pre-built markup. So the JAMstack, like any other tech stack, is kind of a way of building. But the cool thing about JAMstack, it's not specific to a certain stack or set of tools. It's a little more agnostic. It's more of a mindset or an approach to how you build sites and apps. So it gives you a lot of freedom in being that way. So let's kind of break down each of the three parts, the J, the A, and the M. And so for JavaScript, that would involve any dynamic programming during the request response cycle that's handled by JavaScript running entirely on the client. And it could be for any front-end framework library or even just pure JavaScript. So again, this approach is kind of agnostic to any particular tool set, which gives you a lot of freedom to try different things and do different things, but still kind of use this approach to building your sites. And we see a lot of people doing that, especially with JavaScript doing so much nowadays and people doing so much more with it. It's amazing. And then you look at APIs. Now this is kind of interesting. This is the part where that really kind of sets it apart from the old way of just building static things. So APIs would involve all server-side processes or database actions that are abstracted into reusable APIs, accessed over protocol with JavaScript. And these can be custom built or leverage third-party services. So when you build with the JAMstack method, you basically kind of remove that server-side part that you used to build with, dealing with the database and the infrastructure of things, and you offload that to third-party services or something else. So you kind of relieve yourself of that hassle and that responsibility of having to deal with all that. And we'll get into a little bit more of some of that in a little bit, but I mean, it's especially with the so-called API economy and so many services out there that can handle, like, a commenting engine or e-commerce plugins that you can throw into your build. I mean, you don't have to bake these into your site anymore. You can just literally plug and play into your code, and you're off to the races with what you need. So that's APIs, and then markup. Templated markup should be pre-built at deploy time, usually using a site generator for content sites or a build tool for web apps. So using JavaScript for a lot of the interactivity, dynamic things, talking to APIs, and then you serve that up with static markup. Usually that's done with build tools like Grunt or Gulp, or whether either before you deploy or at deployment. A lot of services do that for you now, where as soon as you make a change, it'll trigger a new build and deploy it for you, so you always have an up-to-date site, even though it's being served static. So really cool. And so let's talk about the benefits of this. So why is this a better approach, using those kind of three core areas? Well, for one, it gives you a simpler workflow. You take advantage of Git and version control, set up a repo in GitHub or Bitbucket or anything like that. So you're keeping track of your code. You can move a lot more quickly with things. And then you can set up a build or deploy script, so as soon as you make changes and commit your code up, it triggers your build for you and pushes it up, and you've got the latest work up live on a site somewhere. And then you make that talk to APIs to do a lot of the dynamic things you want it to. So a lot simpler workflow. You can work a lot faster in this kind of workflow, so big advantage to how you build. Another advantage is performance boost. If you're serving up just static files from a CDN, your site's going to be way faster than it would if it's constantly making calls to the server and rendering out pages for clients over and over and over again. And making your site faster is going to help with customer retention, and that obviously is appealing to business owners and things like that. So this is a really great sell for them too, because faster website, better, more customers. So that's another benefit there. It also improves the security of your site. Because again, you're serving up static content that's talking to APIs and things like that. There's less access points. There's less entry points for hackers to get into your site and hack, take over your site or do something with your data, whatever the case may be. And because you're minimizing that, you're reducing the surface area that's vulnerable to attack. So you're increasing, you're hardening the security of your website by using this method too, which is another great benefit, especially nowadays because that's such a hot topic, and we see even huge corporations getting hacked all the time. So another great benefit here. And then lastly, it's lower cost. You don't need a lot of infrastructure. You don't need a huge database infrastructure, lots of servers in place to handle bigger traffic loads. You're just throwing all your static files that talk to APIs up on a CDN, and that allows you to scale a lot faster and a lot cheaper than you would be able to do otherwise. Your site's not going to crash if you get a sudden flush of a bunch of traffic because it's being served through CDNs globally, and you don't have to worry about that. So again, another benefit. It seems simple, but that's the point. It's a lot simpler way to build websites and apps with a lot of great key benefits. So that's all great and all, but what about real world applications? Like, this is great in theory, but how do we make this work? Well, there's actually some people that are already doing this very successfully. Perhaps you've heard of Sequoia Capital. Small firm, they've got a few companies in their portfolio like Google, Twitter, Airbnb. And you might think that like all they need is just like a brochure site, right? They're a VC, what do they need, to handle a lot for? But it's actually a really big website, and obviously they want to position themselves as kind of a powerhouse capital firm behind some of the biggest tech companies around. But their website boasts to have like 15,000 plus HTML pages that are all regularly updated. They have a live search on their website, and their site is static, and it's served that way. So really great example of someone that can do this using this method. Perhaps you've heard of Smashing Magazine, another really popular website for developers and designers. They actually are kind of in a transition of using this kind of workflow to rebuild their site, and you can actually see it now at next.smashingmagazine.com. But, and this is a little preview of it here, you can visit this. But it's interesting, in this first article here, a little surprise is waiting for you, meet the next Smashing Magazine. He actually kind of goes in depth and talks about it. But, they were kind of at a crossroads where they had all these properties where they were selling products, they were promoting events, they were promoting content, writing content, and they were across different properties and in different frameworks and tech tools. And so it's becoming difficult for them to develop differently in all these different places, but keep them all consistent. And so they said, we need to consolidate all this and come up with a way to build quickly and better to keep everything more consistent and more cohesive. And so they came across this, and they partnered with a popular company in the JAMstack community called Netlify, who does static hosting. And they're moving to this tech model. And I mean, they have a ton of requirements. If you just think about it, they have thousands of blog posts. They have over 200,000 comments currently. They sell e-commerce products, like a lot of the books that they sell. They have subscription models to premium content that they use, and they have member logins. Like, that's a lot of stuff. If you just got a spec list, you would just automatically go to, oh, we need to set up a database and do all that. But these guys are accomplishing all of this same stuff with the JAMstack, which is really impressive. And again, just using those 3 core features, JavaScript, APIs, and markup. And so if you're interested, definitely check that article out. It's a really good read. He talks a little bit about the business side of it too, but some of the tech stuff too. So definitely recommend that. And another added benefit of doing this for them was that they took their their average page load time from about 800 milliseconds to 80 milliseconds. So that was like a 10-fold increase in page load speed for them, which is huge, especially for somebody like them based in the UK, but you know, they obviously got a following around the world. That's, again, you can really see the real world benefits and application of using the JAMstack here. So just a couple of good examples of that. So here's some links. I don't expect you to memorize all these, but I'll post this somewhere. If you want to follow me on Twitter, my handle's down in the corner there, Nola_Will. But jamstack.org is a good place to start. They post a lot of articles and resources there. They also have a link to their JAMstack radio podcast, which is really good. They interview a lot of people who are using this in the real world, people like GitHub, and some other big companies I can't remember right now. Staticgen.com and headlesscms.org are both cool sites that are maintained by Netlify. They are both static sites themselves, but they post a good listing of a lot of different tools out there, like static site generators like Jekyll or Middleman, things like that. Headless CMS is a great place if you're looking for ways to still use a CMS, but again, just talk to it through an API. So there's a good place to find some of those. Serverless.com is, they have started a business quickly spinning up AWS Lambda installations, I think. I'm not too as keen on that, but again, kind of taking a lot of the hassle of that and just kind of automating that for you, making it easy so you basically don't have to worry about it and you can focus on just building your site or app. Netlify, which is a hosting company I mentioned earlier, their blog actually covers almost weekly or monthly, I'm not sure on that, but regularly feature sites and companies that are using this approach to build their sites and apps. The newdynamic.org also has a lot of great resources. Guild.beach.io is kind of a forum for a company called GetForage, which is another static hosting service. And then, of course, like I mentioned earlier, you can check out next.smashingmagazine.com. Some more APIs and tools, serverless, Netlify, obviously AWS, GetForage. Contentful is a good headless CMS that I've personally played with. Really cool service. I've been working on a site where if I publish a post in Contentful, it triggers a new build for me on my Netlify site and creates a new static page for me with that content. So again, even though it's being served static, I still have basically a dynamic site. So it's really cool. Zapier is a great service for getting APIs to talk to each other, and Snipcart is a great JavaScript service for just quickly hooking up some, simple payment service to a static website. So a lot of great tools out there, and check out those resources. You'll find a lot more. These are just a sampling of what's out there. And also want to mention that I've talked to the people at Netlify in San Francisco, and they are really excited about interest here in Oklahoma City. So they got me to start a JAMstack OKC Meetup. So if you're interested in learning more about JAMstack, definitely go to the meetup page here and join the group. We hope to maybe do some hack sessions together, just kind of learn as a group, maybe feature some projects or tools and ways to learn more about JAMstack, and maybe some real world applications or how it can be relevant to maybe things you're working on. So definitely check that out as well. And you can find the Twitter on that page if you want to follow us that way. So that was just a kind of a quick overview of JAMstack. Hope it wasn't too much or too fast. So does anybody have any questions? No, actually, one of the designers at Netlify made that for us. So, yes, so I'll have to thank him. Thank you. Yeah. Anyone else have any questions about JAMstack? What it involves? Yeah.
So the basic idea, if I understand, doing server side up, basically, processing. And all of the stuff that would normally be done by calls ahead of time.
Yeah.
Building that, all of the bundling, all the JavaScript, static.
So, okay, so you asked that basically all the things that normally happen when the server renders pages, we're doing at deployment when we trigger changes or something like that. And so your question was, what do services like Netlify do? So Netlify is a static hosting service. They've been around a few years. And for one, they're really cheap service because it's just static hosting. So it's really simple, infrastructure. They start out at free, which gives you like a simple site with custom domain and a few simple things like that. But then some of their paid plans offer you a little bit more complexity with how your deployments happen, and they do a lot more with talking to APIs and doing a lot more with how your builds happen. So it gives you a lot of powerful tools to really do a lot of really interesting things with how you can literally just load if you have like for example a grunt file or a YAML file or something like that in your repo, you can throw like your grunt command or whatever in the deployment stage in Netlify. So anytime you trigger a change or make a change to your code, it'll trigger that build and throw your code out, and boom, you have a new site every time you update it. So good question. Anyone else have any questions about tools? Or yeah. Yeah. So JAMstack isn't specific to like any tool set like you would think about with WordPress or Drupal. So JAMstack is just kind of a loose way of thinking of how to build a site or an app. And there are a lot of services that work into that kind of mindset that could replace WordPress or Drupal. Like I mentioned, Contentful earlier is a service like that, and they're becoming more popular. There's more of them coming out, and they're known as headless CMSs. Because basically you don't, your site's not living with the CMS. The CMS is kind of separate from your site, and you build your site to kind of talk to your content through an API. Mm-hmm. Yeah. 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 No, good question. Yeah. Anybody else have any questions? Mm-hmm.
As you're moving from a regular CSS, are you kind of moving that using a headless CMS on the overall database?
Yeah.
Do you think that on the whole it's
Okay, so you asked a lot of the complexities involved with databases and CMSs like WordPress. Are you just trading that for something else and using JAMstack? Or okay, so not necessarily. There's a lot of ways you can handle that. One way is with a headless CMS, and a lot of them do import from WordPress and stuff like that, so it makes it kind of easy. And then you could kind of like trigger that to run a build off of that content or talk to that, pull that in and generate static pages for each of those content pieces. Another way is using a static site generator like Jekyll or Middleman or Hugo or Hexo or something like that that basically builds them off of like a JSON file or a bunch of markdown files in a directory. And that gives you a lot more freedom to do stuff like that and really kind of architect the scaffolding or the structure of your folders however you want. So there's, another advantage, it gives you a lot more freedom to kind of build it, kind of what's good for you or what's good for your clients. So it's another great advantage of using this kind of approach. Yeah. You had a question? Right. Yeah. Smashing Magazine, or well, let me repeat your question first. So you asked if there was kind of a go-to way to handle content for clients and building with JAMstack. Right. Yeah. No, I get you. Yeah, there's no like de facto way of doing that right now, and I think Contentful is one that's kind of starting to lead a little bit in that space, just in my opinion. But there's a lot out there. Netlify actually, either right before or right around the time they worked with Smashing Magazine, released an open source one called Netlify CMS, which you could use. There's a lot of options you could use like that that give them kind of a similar interface to WordPress. So there's a place where they could log in, edit their content, and when they click save, it, behind the scenes, it's kind of hooked up to all your static build, scripts and deploys and things like that, so that they'll see those updates on the front end. So that's kind of the cool thing, that this is kind of some young tech too, and there's a lot of people coming up, and there's a lot of opportunity for people to really come into this space and get ahead with it. But I don't think there's a one leader, one kind of go-to way to do it yet. Which in one way is exciting, but another way I understand that that's like not as appealing when you're trying to just give easy to use websites to clients. So and I'll admit too, to everyone that this isn't for every project. Obviously there's businesses have different requirements, so this is really useful when you can use it, but it's not a cure-all for everything. So yeah. All right, does anybody else have any other questions? Cool. Well, thank you all again for having me and listening to me for a few minutes rant about how cool JAMstack is. Again, check out the JAMstack Meetup, and you can follow me on Twitter if you want to learn more. Check out some of those resources if you want to dive in more. And with that, I will hand it back over to Sarah.